This is Pastor Gordon. Tonight we're going to be sharing the good news of a new church growth strategy for Streetsboro United Methodist Church. We want to review the overall strategy, decide to adopt the plan, and then start making it happen. This plan involves bringing people to our church in 3 stages. And it's really all based on the mission of Jesus, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 19, and 20. It has 3 parts. It says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. That's the first part. Baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's the second part. And finally, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And those 3 parts are exactly what are in our program. A gathering stage where we're going and making disciples, a baptism stage where we're baptizing people, and a discipling and teaching phase where we're accepting them into our community and then doing things to help them grow in their Christian walk. So how do we do this? These 3 stages have some important aspects to each one of them. The gather stage, the first stage, is where we're going to be probably spending most of our time in the next 4 months. This is implement a proven plan to attract and keep new members. The second phase is baptism, and we'll talk about that as we go along. But that's implementing a plan that promotes the importance of baptism as the special public event for all age groups, as it was originally intended to be. And then finally, discipling and teaching. And that's implementing opportunities for all members to learn God's Word and His intent for their lives, from children to new believers through lifelong Christians. So here's what we're calling our new member playbook. Let's start with a target audience because we're going to be doing a lot of gathering, and that means promotion, and so we've got to understand who we want to be talking to. So would we like to add youth? Tweens, those kids between elementary and high school, teens, high school kids, and even young college students, families, and that can include all the previous, but their parents obviously also, and just adults in general. The fact is, we'd like to attract everyone in Streetsboro who needs a relationship with Jesus. Let's look at our community really quick. The population is 17,000. It's up 3% since 2020, so it is a growing community. The under 18 group is about 18%. Under 65 is most of the residents of the city. 83% of the population is under 65. It's a fairly non-diverse community compared to some of the communities that I've served in the past. It's a mostly white community, 86%. And African Americans, Hispanics, and some others make up the balance of the population. It's a very educated group. So 92% of the community has, and these are the adults, have at least a high school education, which is quite high for most communities. Also, most of the households have computers. This is a very high number. 95% of households have a computer, and of those, 89% have an internet subscription. Even the ones that don't have an internet subscription, they may be getting access to the internet through a cell phone or some other means. 89% of the people were living in the same house a year ago, which means 89% of the people aren't moving around, but that also means that 11% of the town turns over every year. So that's an important number as well, because those transitions of people moving in and out of a community, that can provide you opportunities to attract new people. Now here's the really important number. Only 27% of the people surveyed by bestplaces.net identified that they were affiliated with some religious denomination. And that includes all the Christian denominations, but it also includes Muslims, Buddhists, a number of different religions outside of Christianity. Out of that 27% of people in Streetsboro that identified as being religious, which ends up being about 4,500 people, 680 of those people identify as Methodists. That's 4% of the total city residents are identifying themselves as Methodists, and it's 14.8% of what we could call religious people. So the people in that 27%, the 680 that we make up makes up 14% of the religious people in town. So one of the questions that you ask when you look at the demographics is, we've got this elephant in the room. If we want to attract people, we want to know that they want to be part of something that is a church that looks like them. So this statement I make down the bottom, I want a church with people like me, my age, my interests, people who I can share things with, and people who are going through the same life stage that I am, and have been through the same life stage as I am. That when I want to do activities, I want to do it with people who, if I have kids, I want somebody with kids. If I'm a young single, I want to be around other young singles. So that's an important elephant in the room, and that's something that I think for a lot of churches they never get around to addressing this. Well, let's talk about how we can address that. So here's a plan to do it. And this is borrowed liberally from other successful churches. So this is not something that we're kind of thinking up on the fly. This is something that I'm actually borrowing from the ARC churches and a number of other churches that are having a lot of success and growth right now. Once again, it's based on that mission of Jesus to go out and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them to obey. And that ties in with the United Methodist Book of Discipline, which it says the mission of our church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Local churches and extension ministries of the church provide the most significant arenas through which disciple making occurs. So here's what our plan will involve. As I said, the gathering stage, which is where we're going to be spending most of our time in the next few months, is going to be where we spend a lot of our time, and this whole page is going to be about gathering. The first step of the gathering, though, is where we're at tonight. Developing a vision and a plan. These are the things that we need to talk about tonight. Agreeing on the vision and the plan, researching Streetsboro. I've just shared some research with you. Organizing then to execute it, so we'll get to that next. Planning something called interest parties, and that's going to be a new term for everyone, and we'll get to that later on in this slide. Developing the marketing campaign, and then the roles of existing members of our church and new members of our church, and that's really important. There's going to be a role not just for us, but for the first wave of people that we bring to our church. They're going to be part of the planning process to bring all the rest of the people into the church. So that's where some of our manpower is going to come from, quite frankly. These interest parties are the next step. And this is where you present your opportunity and you share your vision to a group of people in the community who you've attracted through advertising, and you're recruiting leaders at these interest parties. You're also recruiting people who potentially want to be members, but for those people, you're going to tell them you'll need to wait because there's going to be a big launch, and when we do the big launch, we're going to be inviting everyone to come. So we're interested in meeting you, getting to know you. If you want to get involved, great. We want a lot of people involved in putting the pieces together and helping to plan and organize. If you just want to wait until all that's done and just be a member, then you're welcome to join us, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And we discuss roles and next steps and encourage vision sharing. And then there's something down at the bottom here that says Coffee with the Pastor, and that is an activity that I'm going to be conducting that is an outreach activity that we will be trying to engage and encourage people to sit down with me on a few mornings to really talk about what they want and what they need from a church. Then there's the launch team organizing. This is where this group from the interest party starts putting together the pieces that are going to take us to the finish line. And it's maybe 7 to 10 people. It's a mixture of people who are members of the church right now and these new people that we add on. They'll be launching or organizing launch events. And we'll talk about the launch events here as we go on. But there's going to be several events that lead up to actually doing a relaunch. And they'll be developing the conceptual programming and the ministries to present at the invitation events. And that's the next step. These invitation events, these are the big events. These are where we attract large numbers of people, many families. We present a vision for a vibrant new church family. that connects with others just like themselves and meets their needs. And once again, continue to do coffee with a pastor. Now, one of the things that I talked about in the previous slide was this elephant in the room. The way that you address that whole elephant in the room is you fill rooms with people that look like them. You don't make your first invitation to say, please come to my church service, because chances are today, until we're ready to go, they're not going to see the people who look like them. That's why we invent these two different events, interest parties and invitation events. And then there's a third event called a coffee with the pastor. And in each one of those events, they're not being surrounded by people who don't look like them. They're going to be surrounded by people who look more like them. And that's how these churches address this elephant in the room, if you will. Finally, the realized vision. This is after we do our launch. And I'm just going to put a target of 50 plus families. And I don't want to limit the Holy Spirit and what he can do in our community. I don't want to limit our church and what we can do. But I think it's fair, and we're going to need a number, by the way, in order to budget for advertising. I think it's fair to have an idea of what we think this could look like and what we want to try to achieve based on the results that other people have had who executed this plan. Now, I will tell you, you're going to hear, if you start digging into the ad agency that we're working with, you're going to hear about a lot of churches that have 200 families plus in the first 6 months, and I think that's great, and I hope we get there. But I want to be conservative. I don't want to overestimate and over budget and over plan, but we have to be prepared if this program is really successful that we've got all the pieces in place at the back end. Now, this realized vision, the bullet points after the 50 plus families are really important. So let's go through those. We need to develop a responsive new member class. And that's where new members, depending on where they're at in their Christian walk, will get a different type of new member class. So we've got some work to do as far as new member classes, and we'll talk about that in some later slides. I want to develop a responsive worship format. One of the things that's being very successful in a lot of churches, especially smaller churches right now, is this whole responsive worship format where it's not just a bunch of people presenting a worship service and then everyone walks out, but actually engaging and asking questions and getting people to stand up and say something, or getting people to ask a question even in the middle of the sermon, raise their hand and say, hey, I've got a question, I don't understand what you just said. And that kind of responsive worship format, particularly for smaller churches, turns our church into more like what the church was at the very beginning, back even before Christianity. The Jewish worship services were not, songs and lights and all the other things. They were people talking to each other, and someone reading and then interpreting, and people questioning them. And it was quite a different worship experience than what we're used to. And I'd like to encourage some of that. I don't think we'll ever get completely to that format, but I think it's something that's worth exploring. Developing discipleship for both new Christians and existing Christians. And this discipleship can be both training, Bible study, small group work, but it can also be doing things to exercise your service and mission and ministry activities. So there's a number of things that go into discipleship there, but we've got to think about the fact that there are going to be new Christians who don't know anything about the faith, and there's going to be people who know a lot and really want to take a deeper dive. And finally, develop mission and service opportunities. And that's something that'll evolve both from the things that we do right now as a church, and when you've got a lot of new families coming in, it'll be some things that they want to do, that they're maybe especially equipped to do, that they've got a real driving need. And we'll give them the opportunity to lead some of those things. So getting ready. Getting people in the door is really important, and a lot of churches struggle with how do we do this, and they try a lot of different things. The fact of the matter is there's things that are out there that are proven, and one of them is an organization called Church Candy Marketing, which is a social media marketing company, and they use a lot of different techniques to reach out into the community using the #1 platform in the world, which is Facebook. There's more people on Facebook every day than any other website. In fact, than all other websites combined. It's just a powerhouse website, and it's the place where if you're going to attract attention and tell the community, hey, there's something going on at that church, that's where they're going to find it. But it's not simply posting things to our Facebook page, because that really depends on people already being our friends. What you need to do is you need to push your message out into the Facebook feeds, and you can geo-target these Facebook ads. And what that means is you can talk to just the people in the community that you want to talk to. So we can limit our Facebook advertising to the city of Streetsboro and maybe a surrounding area, a surrounding zip code or something, but we can definitely target our area. Instagram is a partner website that interacts well with Facebook, and so advertising on Instagram is going to attract the younger audience. It's going to attract the 18 to 30 type of age group. So Instagram advertising also can be part of the mix. There's something called Google Ads Grant. Google actually gives for nonprofits like us $10,000 a month in Google advertising for free. And Google advertising is when you, like if you Google something, if you search for something on the internet using Google, you'll see certain sponsored things pop to the top of your list. And really what we want to play in is a space called Church Near Me. It's one of the most common search terms that people use when they're looking for a church near them. And we could also look at Church Near Streetsboro or United Methodist Church Near Me. But those search terms, we get $10,000 of paid advertising for free from Google. It's a community service that they provide that will drive us to the top of the results, because in my searches right now, I'm not seeing that there are any sponsored results for any churches in the Streetsboro area. So we would immediately pop to the top of the list when somebody says, I want to see churches near me. You're going to see Streetsboro United Methodist Church at the very top of the list, which is exactly where you want to be. The Google My Business profile, that's another thing that pops up, that when you say, a church near me, off to the right-hand side, you'll see something about a picture of a building and an address and everything. Ideally, your church is the one that pops up there, and we'll work through that. This company, Church Candy Marketing, uses their platform to make sure that we get high ranking on that. Search engine optimization, I won't get too technical here with you, but it's essentially that after you do some advertising, are you going to continue to be at the top of the list for churches in your area? And there's some things that we will need to do to our website to improve our search engine optimization, and that's something that's an important part of the plan. Retargeting is for people who may have started to look at us. They maybe clicked on one of our ads and started reading about us, and then they went away. They never scheduled a visit, or they never reached out or connected with us. Retargeting goes back to those same people and connects with them again. It's the same sort of thing that companies use when they're you leave something in your shopping cart when you're on Amazon and you didn't finish the transaction. They come back to you and say, hey, you started looking at this, or are you still interested, sort of thing. And then personalized automatic follow-up. This is really important, because when people do touch us through one of these ad platforms, and we're going to be asking them to plan their visit, we're going to be asking them to give us some information, or to tell us that they're intending to attend an interest party or an invitation event. They're going to tell us that they want to do those things, and there will be automated follow-ups that follow up with those people. So what does this cost? So here's a couple viewpoints. Up at the top it says best case, I think $2,000 to get, and this is straight from Church Candy's website, to get 75 new guests, which I think would be a good target. If 30% of the people show up, and that's 30% of the people who say they're going to show up, if they actually only 30% show up, that would get you to 75. So it's actually probably about 225, 230 people say they're going to attend an event or attend a church service. If only 30% of them show up, that's 75. And you're spending $20 every time a family plans a visit, then we recommend an ad budget of about $2,000. So this is what Church Candy has said is a reasonable budget for this type of engagement. Now, worst case down below, I built a little table. I said, if we start running ads in September, October, November, and December, and we do a heavy up at the very beginning, because we're probably going to have quite a higher. I think we're going to have a higher dropout rate at the very beginning, but I think it's going to improve over time. That if we get 50 people to say, or if we want to have 50 people visit us and partake in those early interest parties, the cost of that's going to be about $1,450. The retain number there is different than what's up above. The retain number here is how many of these people that after they hear our story or after they engage with our church actually stay. And so out of the 50, I said 15 maybe would stay after the first wave. I hope it's higher, because these are people that we're actually getting in the door. And if that number is higher, that's even better for us. The second month I've got budgeted for 30 people, and the cost there is $869. The third month is November, it's 20 incremental people, and December is 20 more incremental people. And you say, well, why did you go down over time? I thought we were trying to build up at the end. Well, what happens if you look at the cumulative number at the far right? The cumulative numbers keep getting higher and higher. The people that you've gathered in the first wave, they're the ones who are staying. They're the ones who are continuing. So they're actually part of the base. The good news is what happens with anything like this is if people like what they're hearing and they start telling their friends and neighbors about this, these numbers could increase. But based on this second worst case plan, it shows that there'd be 110 new people visiting us, and because all those are incremental new people. And then out of that, there would be 61 new members. So because and it could be much higher, it could be lower. But I think this would be a budget that would be very attractive to us, and we would be able to raise the money from both our budget, from individual contributions, and encourage some new tithes maybe from our congregation. And this would take us through the end of the year. On a maintenance basis, down at the bottom, it says Church Candy also claims they can get 30 to 90 new visitors per month with a $300 to $900 a month spend. I think if we got to a maintenance program here where we would be spending about $300 a month, I think over time we would continue to see new guests, new visitors, and we could get into those 200 numbers within a year. And that's really my hope, is that we can get this to a point where it's self-sustaining, and where it's really helping our church grow. There's a contact strategy here. It really involves a lot of work that I will be involved with Church Candy on. My background, as you know, is marketing, and they give us a lot of assets and a lot of resources to put all this together. Developing on-target messages, content, photos, and videos, much of which we will have to provide. Running A/B ads. An A/B ad is where you run the same ad, but you run it two different ways with different headlines or different photos to see which one's working. And then after a month, you see which one's not working. You eliminate that one, and you pump up the advertising on the one that is working. And we'll probably run a couple different A/B ads simultaneously. So we'll have maybe 2 or 3 different ads running over the course of a month. And there will be 2 different versions of each one of those. So there'll be 6 different total variations. And of those, there will be 3 winners and 3 losers. And we will keep investing that way so that we are getting the best bang for our buck, if you will. And then this great visit experience, that's something that all of us have to work on. And we'll talk about what some of the parts of a great visit experience are when we get into the execution here. And then prompt personal follow-up. There's a follow-up strategy that I said was automated. There's also a follow-up strategy that involves an interactivity with the pastor. They recommend the senior pastor calls or sends a video or sends a personal email to each person. And so that's something that's something that's on me. The message development part is something we're going to be spending a lot of time on. We're going to be spending time with Church Candy on this. asking key questions like, why do people need God? Why do people want church? And keywords that you see down below here that I really found on a lot of different church websites that are very successful growing churches. People are looking for peace, meaning, hope, acceptance, forgiveness, connection, friendship, love, answers, safety, thankfulness, and salvation. We'll weave those kinds of words into the messaging that we're going to be doing with Church Candy. So here's the major timelines and key activities. We're in August right now. So in August it says, agree on the program, set the budget and the calendar, contract with Church Candy Marketing, identify internal resources for development activities, so who in our church is going to work on certain things, and develop a list of our current ministries and content. And content would be photos, videos, whatever we've got. In September, it's content development. It's filling in the gaps where we're missing content, and also working with Church Candy on what the actual ads will be and what the words and pictures will be. A Facebook and website overhaul, beginning the advertising work, facility work that we may need to do to make ourselves a little more attractive and easy to access, particularly as people start touring through our building. Interest party number 1, probably towards the end of September. Coffee with the pastor beginning. Follow-ups, develop our adult ministry program and our youth ministry program, because those pieces have to be in place when people start showing up. In October, interest party number 2, coffee with the pastor, and our invitation event number 1. This is where we're actually asking potential new members to come. We're not looking for leaders now, we're looking for members. Formation, follow-ups, developing new members, and new UMC and new believer classes. So there's three classes I listed there at the end: new members, new to the UMC, and new believers. We'll talk about that in a minute. The formation part that I said there is really where we are doing all of the activities to get ready. So these are readiness activities. November, interest party number 3, coffee with the pastor. Invitation event number 2, more formation activities. And a lot of these formation activities, the reason they don't happen in September or August is because they involve the new people that we're bringing in. So they will be helping with the formation activities. And then planning in November our pre-launch and our launch activities. So our pre-launch activity in December is a pre-launch Christmas party. It's a celebration. We'll call it a first hospitality event for the general public that's also for our church. And it's where we're going to talk about our excitement about our launch in January. So we'll also do coffee with the pastor and follow-ups from all these. Every step along the way you're seeing there's follow-ups with everyone. Then in January, we do the big launch. This is where we say, this is the date we point everyone to all along this timeline and say, you can attend a service, but you're not going to see the big launch until January. So, we'd love to have you come to the big launch in January. We don't want to completely dissuade them, but we also don't want to encourage them to come to anything before the launch. If we do, what they'll be exposed to is, I'll call it, unbaked cake batter. They're not going to see the cake they're expecting. They're going to see unbaked cake batter. And we want them to see the fully baked cake, frosted, decorated, with the candles lit and everything. And that's going to happen in January. So that's our encouragement, is going to be, to get involved. If they want to get involved before that, let's see if we can get them involved in all these formation activities and planning activities so that we can make the launch really successful. And we'll share the vision with them. We'll share that we want to bring people like them into the church, and that's going to happen in January. So also in January, we would begin adult classes, youth ministries, new member classes, and more follow-ups. And then in February, there's going to be a number of these new people who are brand new Christians. They're adults, they've lived their whole life, and they may have been in and out of churches. They never really got saved. They never really got the message. And now all of a sudden, they're realizing they need Jesus in their life, and they're ready to make a change. And this baptism event will be this big event, this community event that we do that helps to celebrate that. New member classes. I talked about new members. 3 different types. First, for anybody that joins us, anybody new, there's this new to Streetsboro UMC class, and it's really about our church. There's the parts of it are there's basics. Talk about our membership, our service times, our ministries, things that we've had ongoing. Give them a tour of our facility. Give them a map of our facility, upstairs, downstairs, outside. We've got some great features in our facility, and it's great for them to know about that. We may even include there some history of our building and the old church at Hale Farm. Third, how to get involved. A list of the ministries that we offer, and importantly, the names and contact informations for leaders. We'll also ask them to, if they care to, sign up for some things, and we'll need the follow-up from those leaders to follow up with them and say, hey, I understand you're interested in our food pantry, for instance. So I want to welcome you. I'll invite you to come by on this day at this time, and we'll talk and we'll plug you in. And then something called a spiritual gifts inventory that I've talked about in church a couple times, which is really helping them to understand what their gifts are that come from the Holy Spirit. And then the last part is connecting with Streetsboro, connecting them with a mentor, somebody in the church who they can connect with, who can be kind of their friend/guide. This may have been somebody that attracted them in the first place. It may be somebody that's a long-term member, but somebody that they can make a connection with right away. We want to make sure that we don't have solo artists out there, that we don't have people who feel like they don't have any connection to the church. We want to have somebody connecting with them. And then the second part, this is really important, this is connection with a small group. Now, this may have been addressed up above where it says, we're going to try to connect them with ministries, but if they're not connecting with a ministry, we want to make sure they get connected with a ministry. And this is where it's really important for us to, as we gather names, also to build this database of all members of our church. We've got an Excel spreadsheet already started like this, and make a note there of what ministries they're involved in, which ministries they're active in. Because if we see a blank there, if we see there's a hole there, that means we've got some work to do to help try to connect them in ministry. Connected people stay in the church. People who have friends, people who find a family here, they are going to stay. People who don't feel connected, they're going to walk away. And then the last thing down at the bottom is connection events. And this is where we can plan some activities and events to connect people in the congregation. And this is where mentors and small groups can encourage their people to come and these are hospitality events, they're fun events, they're internal events just for us where we're connecting with each other. And we can even set up tables for each of the ministries and have them attract new members that way. The second one here is new to the UMC. And this is somebody who's maybe been a part of another denomination, like a Lutheran or Presbyterian or Episcopal or Catholic or even a Jew or some other denomination, but they're new to the United Methodist Church, so they don't understand what it's all about. This pamphlet you see on the left-hand side, there's a free PDF that you can download online. The link is down at the bottom. It's a free download, and it goes through. This is the table of contents that it shows here: our Wesleyan heritage, grace and discipleship, our Wesleyan ways, and living out discipleship. So 4 major areas that talks about that are the essentials of what it means to be a member of the United Methodist Church. This may also be a great thing for our existing members because they may not have ever been through this, or maybe it was 30 years ago they went through this, and obviously this brochure wasn't around then. So it might be a good thing for everybody to go through, but or a lot of people to go through. But definitely we need to have new members who don't know anything about United Methodism have this as a resource and go through this because it'll answer maybe some of their biggest questions. And then the final new member class is new to the Christian faith. Now, I gave an example here. This is something that I don't know that we have a program for right now, but we need one. If we're lacking one, there's a free one that's on this phone app that I've got called YouVersion. It's the Bible app. The QR code down in the lower right-hand side, that takes you to there. So if you scan that QR code, it'll take you there and it'll load onto your phone. And it's literally the Bible times about 50 different translations, but it's also got a lot of other things on it. One of them is a study that Greg Laurie, who you may have heard of, he's the guy that they based the movie Jesus Revolution on. Greg Laurie came up with these 7 steps of things that people need to know who are new to the Christian faith. how you can know God, how you can study your Bible, how to pray, attending church meetings, the importance of that, and that's both church services and other things the church is doing, obeying God, giving to God, and sharing your faith. So it's all really important things for new members to hear and to understand, and it's a really good program. I'm not saying that's the program. I'm just saying if we're lacking something, this is one that we could plug into. And now I borrowed this frame from I'm not actually going to promote that we are going to do the distinctive discipleship program because I don't know enough about it. I just really like this graphic because it's talking about discipleship, and it's talking about designing specific plans for Christian maturity. And we've got to look at all of our different age groups and all of our different needs groups as needing some kind of discipleship program. For adults in the upper left, adult studies, couples events, singles events, some retreats. There's things that the United Methodist Church puts on, and there's things that we can do on our own. And there's resources for both. In the upper right, teens, Bible studies, lock-ins, missions, outdoor events. And that could include the tweens as well that I talked about earlier. Down in the lower left, for youth, Sunday school and VBS, back to school events, youth worship. We can also talk about a lot of other activities. The most fun activity that I think I ever did with the kids in Tampa was we did Night of 1,000 Wings. It was a Super Bowl party where we literally deep fried 1,000 chicken wings and made buffalo wings out of them, and had lots of other food and snacks too. But we had on our big screen, we had the Super Bowl playing, and we had probably about 1,000 people attend. It was a really, really great, really great event. And there are lots of other events that we can do. And then the lower right, it says service. So work projects, tutoring, and mentoring. That's one of the things that a friend of mine who's really big in youth ministry says, going into the schools and providing people who can tutor and mentor troubled students in each of the school districts. First of all, the schools love it. Second of all, you're allowed to bring the Bible into school, and you're allowed to talk about your faith in school if it's sponsored by a school, paid for by, sponsored by us, paid for by us. It's something that we can bring faith into the community and show them the face of Christ in a very positive way. Food drive and pantry, clothing and bikes. There's a lot of ministries that we already do that other people would want to plug into. So that's the end of the presentation. That's a lot of information. So now let's have a discussion.